It was a crisp Saturday evening, December 20th, 1968, 9:45 p.m., in Benicia, California when the unthinkable happened. 22-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen were parked in an isolated lover's lane spot near the top of Lake Herman Road. Their Chevrolet Bel Air was a dimly lit bubble of tranquility, but this peace would be short-lived. The sound of a tire blowout shattered the stillness. As we recreate this pivotal moment, the image of a quiet country road is suddenly interrupted by the faint glow of a car's dashboard lights, and the inky blackness of the night sky above. The sound of rubber screeching against the pavement is a cacophony that shatters the serenity of the evening. A chill runs down the spine as we imagine the terror that unfolded in the next few moments. It's a scene that would remain etched in the minds of those who witnessed the events that night. In the midst of a seemingly ordinary evening, a nightmare begins to unfold. At the center of this chaos are two teenagers, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen. They were on a date, enjoying the freedom of being young, but little did they know that their evening would end in unimaginable horror. David, a bright and ambitious young man, was driving, and Betty Lou, a shy but vibrant 16-year-old, sat beside him. Their lives were on the cusp of a new beginning, but fate had other plans for them. Their families, their friends, and the entire community would soon be left reeling in the aftermath of that fateful evening. Eyewitness reports tell us that a few minutes after the tire blowout, the sound of shots rang out, followed by the screeching of tires and the faint cries of the teenagers. It was a cacophony of chaos that sent shockwaves through the quiet neighborhood. Witnesses reported hearing the sound of a man's voice shouting something, but the exact words remain a mystery. Others claim to have seen a figure fleeing the scene, but the details are hazy. The exact events that unfolded that night would remain a subject of debate for years to come. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. Don't miss out on our latest investigations and true crime stories. From infamous serial killers to shocking cold cases, we've got you covered. Let me take you back to the very beginning of this story, to the summer of 1966, when the first cryptic letters began to arrive, taunting the police with a sinister message. The Zodiac Killer, as he would later be known, sent a series of letters to the San Francisco Chronicle, claiming responsibility for the murders and boasting about his skills as a killer. Little did anyone know that this was just the beginning of a reign of terror that would span several years, claim numerous lives, and leave a lasting impact on the nation. As we delve into the story of the Zodiac Killer, we'll explore the events that unfolded in the late 1960s and early 1970s. We'll examine the evidence, interview experts, and piece together the puzzle of one of the most elusive serial killers in American history. From the initial reports of a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows to the eventual uncovering of cryptic clues and codes, the story of the Zodiac Killer is a twisted tale of obsession, manipulation, and murder. With each new revelation, the question on our minds remains: who was the Zodiac Killer, and how did he evade capture for so long? The central figure in this case is known to many as the Zodiac Killer, but we'll focus on the man who may have been the killer, Richard Gajkowski. Born on January 2, 1936, in San Francisco, California. Gajkowski lived a relatively normal life, with his wife, Barbara, and children in the Bay Area. His occupation was a journalist, and he was well respected in his field. He was a member of the San Francisco Writers' Conference and held a degree in journalism from San Francisco State University. Richard Gajkowski's daily life was that of a typical family man, working as a journalist, contributing to several local newspapers. He was a member of the San Francisco Writers' Conference and enjoyed writing short stories and poetry. His wife, Barbara, described him as a devoted father and husband. Gajkowski's friends described him as charming and charismatic. His co-workers appreciated his professionalism and dedication to his work as a journalist. Gajkowski was a man who commanded respect, and many people found him to be likable, relatable, and sympathetic. His family and friends adored him, and he was well integrated into his community. His colleagues appreciated his work ethic and respected his skills as a writer. Gajkowski was a talented individual who had a way of making people feel at ease. His charismatic personality helped him build strong relationships with those around him. Gajkowski's relationships were built on trust, and he was well respected by his peers and friends. His wife, Barbara, was his closest confidant, and he shared his deepest secrets with her. Gajkowski also had a close friend, Robert Grier Allen, who considered him a brother. His colleagues at the newspaper trusted him to handle sensitive information. Gajkowski's relationships were built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect. As the late 1960s came to a close, Gajkowski's life began to take a drastic turn. His marriage to Barbara was experiencing difficulties. He had started to develop a pattern of obsessive behavior, which was starting to affect his relationships. Gajkowski had become increasingly withdrawn and isolated from his friends and family. His obsession with a new woman in his life was causing strain on his marriage. The first warning signs that something was wrong with Gajkowski started to appear in 1968. His colleagues at the newspaper noticed that he was acting strangely, becoming increasingly isolated and withdrawn. His wife, Barbara, also sensed a change in him, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Gajkowski's obsession with a new woman, a younger woman named Susan, was causing tension in his marriage. His behavior was starting to raise red flags. It's worth noting that Gajkowski's new obsession with Susan was not without controversy. Susan's own mother had concerns about Gajkowski's behavior towards her daughter. She noticed that Gajkowski was overly possessive and controlling, which raised her suspicions. Susan's mother decided to take action, but her warnings fell on deaf ears. Gajkowski's friends and family were starting to ignore the warning signs. As the months went by, Gajkowski's behavior became increasingly erratic. He was spending more and more time with Susan, and his relationship with his wife and children was deteriorating. His obsession with Susan was causing him to make questionable decisions, which would have far-reaching consequences. Gajkowski's life was about to take a drastic turn, one that would lead to a series of tragic events. His friends and family were powerless to stop him. But what if I told you that some investigators believe they have found evidence that points to Gajkowski as the Zodiac Killer? A cryptic message sent to the police in 1969 has been linked to Gajkowski, and some experts believe it's a smoking gun. But is it really Gajkowski, or is it just a coincidence? The investigation continued for years, but Gajkowski's name was never mentioned. That is, until now. On January 4, 1969, at approximately 10 o'clock at night, the quiet suburban neighborhood of Blue Rock Springs in Vallejo, California was bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. A dense fog had rolled in from the Pacific coast, casting an eerie veil over the area. The air was crisp and cool, with a hint of the approaching winter season. Residents were tucked away in their homes, unaware of the horror that was about to unfold. The streets were empty, save for the occasional passing car. In the weeks leading up to the crime, a series of cryptic letters and codes had been sent to the Vallejo Times-Herald, signed by an unknown sender claiming to be the Zodiac Killer. These letters detailed a series of gruesome murders, including the killing of two teenage couples in separate incidents. The Zodiac Killer had claimed responsibility for these crimes, sending gruesome details and even a crude diagram of a crosshair symbol. The police were baffled by the letters, unable to make any connection to the actual crimes. As the letters continued to arrive, the community grew increasingly fearful. On that fateful night, the Zodiac Killer struck again. He parked his car near Blue Rock Springs Park, where a young couple, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau, had stopped to take a romantic stroll. The killer emerged from the shadows, brandishing a small-caliber revolver, and opened fire on the couple. Michael Mageau survived, but his injuries were severe. Darlene Ferrin, 22 years old, died instantly. The killer then escaped into the fog, leaving behind a gruesome scene. The police were called to the scene and began processing the area for evidence. The most chilling detail of this crime was the Zodiac Killer's taunting message, left behind at the scene. A small piece of paper, scribbled with two cryptic words, "See you at the bottom." It was a message that would haunt the police for years to come, and become one of the most infamous quotes in true crime history. This simple phrase has been etched into the public's consciousness, sparking imaginations and fueling the fascination with the Zodiac Killer. The graphic nature of the crime, combined with the killer's brazen message, sent shockwaves through the community. The darkness of that night still echoes to this day. Police first responded to the Zodiac Killer's attacks by investigating the victims and gathering evidence from the crime scenes. They were baffled by the cryptic letters and codes sent by the killer, which seemed to taunt them and evade capture. On July 31, 1969, police launched a massive manhunt for the killer, but it would take them a while to get a handle on the scope of the case. As more bodies turned up, police began to piece together a timeline of events and look for patterns. The investigation was initially led by the Vallejo Police Department, but it would soon become a collaborative effort between multiple agencies. The key piece of evidence that changed everything was the cryptogram, a coded message sent to the San Francisco Chronicle in 1969. The code was so complex that experts were stumped, and the police were desperate for a breakthrough. In 2000, a computer scientist named Dave Orenchak finally cracked the code, revealing a chilling message that read, "I like killing people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild animals in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all." The code solution was a significant breakthrough in the case, but it also raised more questions. It confirmed that the killer was highly intelligent and calculating. Who were the main suspects in the case? One of the most notable was Arthur Lee Allen, a convicted child molester who was investigated by police in the 1970s. Another suspect was Richard Gaikowski, a journalist who had access to the Chronicle's archives and had previously sent cryptic letters to the paper. The police also looked at Ross Sullivan, a known troublemaker who had a history of violence, and Paul Stein, a cab driver who was killed by the Zodiac Killer. Although these suspects were intriguing, none of them were ever positively identified as the killer. The red herring that wasted months of investigation was the Z-138 letter, which police believed was a breakthrough in the case. The letter was sent in 1970 and appeared to be a response to a previous message from the killer. However, it was later revealed that the letter was actually a forgery, intended to mislead investigators. The police had wasted months chasing down leads based on the letter, only to discover it was a false lead. As the case continued to go cold, the community began to lose hope that the killer would ever be caught. The Zodiac Killer case has been closed, but not in the way you'd expect. A twist has come to light, 30 years after the killer's last known communication. The revelation involves a former police chief who claims to have cracked the code in the killer's infamous 340-character cipher. This code has been an enduring mystery for decades, confounding experts and sparking countless theories. However, the chief's revelation suggests a previously unknown suspect, Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was a convicted child molester with a history of violent behavior. The chief who came forward with this revelation has been under fire for his unorthodox methods, but some believe he may be onto something. The Zodiac Killer's letters and ciphers contain phrases and words that could be directly linked to Allen's life and crimes. If this is true, it would mean a new suspect has emerged, potentially closing the case for good. Still, many are skeptical, pointing out the lack of concrete evidence. Despite the new revelation, the Zodiac Killer